Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we are tackling a word you see everywhere, a word that's very politically charged. Oligarch.
It's a heavy one.
It is. And when you see it in a headline, it almost always paints a picture of, massive wealth, maybe some shady backroom deals. The word itself just feels negative.
It does now, yeah. The first thing you think of is a modern business tycoon, right? But if that's all we see, we're really missing the bigger picture.
What are we missing?
Well, the problem is that the current use of the word, it's been totally warped. It strips away all the really deep political and historical meaning behind it.
Okay, so that's our mission for this deep dive. We're going to push past the headlines and dig into the real history of the word.
All the way back to the beginning.
All the way back to ancient Greece, where it all started. Because when this term was first used, it wasn't about a person. It was about a system of government, the structure.
And that's such a crucial point. If you really want to understand the debates we're having today about concentrated power, you have to get that original context.
Right.
It started out as a neutral, descriptive term.
Okay, so let's start right there, at the source. Break the word down for us.
Happy to. This is where the Greeks were just, brilliant. They were so precise with their language for politics.
Right.
So, oligarchy. It comes from two Greek roots. The first part is oligos.
Oligos. And that just means few or small.
Exactly. Simple enough. And the second part is archaea. That's from the verb archein.
Which means to rule.
To rule or to command. You put them together, oligarchia, and you get the literal translation, rule by the few.
So when philosophers like Herodotus or Aristotle were using this, they weren't throwing an insult.
Not at all. It was just a category, a label. It was purely descriptive.
Part of their framework for how power works.
A very clear framework. You had monos monarchy, rule by one. You had demos democracy, rule by the many.
And oligos oligarchy, rule by the few.
It was that simple. It just described where power was located. It didn't automatically mean that power was being abused. It was just a fact. A small group was in charge.
So if it started out as this neutral descriptive term, when did it start to get that negative spin? When did we start to get suspicious of the rule by the few?
That's where the great philosophers come in. That's the pivot point, and it really starts with Plato.
Okay, so Plato. In the Republic, he's not a fan of oligarchy. Is it just that he has a problem with rich people running things?
Well, it's a bit more than that. He's analyzing what he sees as a deep structural flaw in that system.
And that flaw is what?
The barrier to entry. In an oligarchy, as Plato saw it, the one thing that determines whether you can hold office is a property qualification.
So you need to have a certain amount of money or land just to get in the door.
Precisely. And what that does immediately is it concentrates all political power in the hands of the wealthy. And Plato saw how corrosive that was.
So.
He had this memorable line. He said it split the city into two, the rich and the poor locked in constant tension.
I see. So the whole system becomes about protecting wealth, not about serving the public good.
That's it. It's no longer about civic virtue. It's about protecting your assets. That's the inherent conflict he identified.
Okay, so that's Plato's take. What about Aristotle? He was a bit more of a scientist about these things, right? Did he see it as a complete failure?
Not a failure, no. He was much more analytical. In his work, Politics, he approaches it almost like a biologist classifying species. He was critical for sure, but he put it into a system.
And this is where we get that really famous distinction, the one between aristocracy and oligarchy.
That's the one. And this is the moment the term really changes forever. For Aristotle, aristocracy was the good version of rule by the few.
Rule by the best.
Exactly. It was supposed to be based on virtue, on merit. The leaders were the most capable, the most moral citizens.
But then oligarchy is the corrupted form of that.
It's the deviation. Oligarchy is what happens when wealth, just pure money and property, replaces virtue as the most important qualification for a leader.
So it's not just rule by the few anymore. It's specifically rule by the wealthy few.
And crucially, rule by the wealthy few for their own interests.
Right. So the problem isn't the number of rulers. It's that the rules themselves are designed to benefit those rulers.
That's the core distinction. Aristotle saw that if you base political power on property, the laws that get made will always protect that property. They'll protect large fortunes. They'll prevent land from being redistributed. It becomes a system of self-preservation for the rich.
And that's the point where the word sheds its neutrality for good.
It's the moment it picks up that baggage of being biased and self-serving. And that's the meaning that has stuck with it for over 2,000 years.
Wow. So that distinction, virtue versus property, is just
Yeah.
It's everything. And once you see that pattern, you start to see it pop up all over history.
It's everywhere. The pattern is incredibly persistent. I mean, take ancient Rome, the Roman Republic. It had assemblies for the people, sure, but the real power,
The Senate.
the Senate. And it was a textbook oligarchy.
Because it was dominated by the same few patrician families for centuries.
For centuries, families like the Cornelii, the Julii, the Claudi, they controlled everything. And they did it through their vast land holdings and this system of patronage.
Where they essentially owned the loyalty of the lower classes.
Right. Through debt, through favors. They controlled votes, military commands, finance. It was concentrated hereditary wealth operating as the government.
And you see that same kind of structure carry over into medieval Europe.
Oh, absolutely. The entire feudal system was basically an oligarchy based on birthright. You had a tiny class of lords and barons who controlled all the land, all the titles.
And they kept that power locked down through things like inheritance and strategic marriages.
Exactly. The few who ruled were defined by bloodline, which always came with massive untouchable property.
But I think the really fascinating examples, the ones that feel a bit more modern, they come from Renaissance Italy.
Yes, the merchant elites, they were absolute masters at turning financial power into political control.
Like in Venice.
Venice is a perfect case. The oligarchy there was literally written down. Your family name had to be in the Golden Book, this official register.
And if it wasn't?
If it wasn't, you couldn't be part of the government. End of story. It didn't matter how rich you were or how smart you were, your bloodline was your ticket in.
And then you have Florence and the Medici family. They feel like the ultimate example of this.
Oh, the Medicis. They are maybe the best historical example of how to convert business wealth into political power without ever officially taking over.
They were bankers, right? That was their main thing.
They were bankers, first and foremost, and they used their money from banking, from trade, from funding art to basically pull all the strings in Florence.
But they kept up the appearance of a republic the whole time. How did they pull that off?
It was subtle. They made sure their allies got key government jobs, they influenced elections from the shadows, and, maybe the most important thing, they controlled the debt.
The debt of their rivals.
The debt of their rivals, of other powerful families, of key city officials. If you owed the Medici Bank a lot of money, how freely could you really vote against their interests?
You couldn't.
You couldn't. They ran the city from their bank. It's the perfect demonstration that controlling the money is controlling the policy.
And that just leads us straight into the modern era, where the line between economic and political power has gotten, almost impossibly blurry.
It's the core of the modern definition, really. The word oligarch has expanded. It's not just about a formal political system anymore.
It's about individuals.
Exactly. It's about powerful individuals whose personal wealth is so immense, it gives them the same kind of influence as a head of state. And they have that power without ever having to run for office.
So the modern oligarch doesn't need a seat in the Senate. They just need to control the things that influence the Senate.
Right. They control the flow of information, the flow of capital. The mechanisms they're much more sophisticated now.
What are we talking about? Lobbying? Campaign donations?
It's all of that, but on a massive scale. Sustained lobbying, huge political donations, often through channels where you can't even see who the donor is. It's also about leading these giant corporations whose decisions can affect an entire country's economy.
I think two of those mechanisms are really key to understand. Philanthropy and regulatory capture.
Yes. Let's start with philanthropy. It sounds good, right? Giving away money.
Of course.
But when you have these massive foundations with billions of dollars, they can direct that money to steer public opinion. They can fund think tanks that push for specific policies that, by the way, often end up benefiting their own business interests.
So you're using charity as a tool to shape the public conversation.
To shape the debate, yeah. And then there's regulatory capture. That's even more direct.
That's where the industry you're supposed to be policing ends up controlling you.
Exactly. The regulatory agencies that are supposed to protect the public interest get filled with people from the very industries they're meant to watch over. It's that revolving door between government and the private sector.
So you end up with rules written by the people they're supposed to be restraining.
And you can see how concentrated wealth starts to act like its own form of government, even inside a democracy.
It really is the ultimate blurring of lines. When just one person, a media owner, or a handful of investors can actually sway an election or dictate national policy, That's wealth operating as a form of rule.
It is. It has the authority of government, but none of the accountability.
Which brings us to a big misconception today, that this idea of an oligarch is somehow a new thing, or that it's uniquely corrupt in our modern world.
Right, and if you take one thing away from this deep dive, it should be that this is not new at all. It's a recurring pattern, a structural pattern.
It's existed in every era.
In every single one. You have the silver mine owners in Athens, the patricians in Rome, the medieval barons, the industrial tycoons of the 19th century, and now you have global leaders in tech and finance. The names and industries change, but the pattern of concentrated power remains.
So the issue isn't really about whether oligarchy exists or not. It's just that the way the rule of the few operates has changed. It's evolved.
That's a great way to put it. The term isn't just a moral judgment on rich people, it's an analytical tool. It helps us identify the point where power, based on wealth, becomes so concentrated that it starts writing the rules for everyone else.
So this whole deep dive really brings us to a question that's thousands of years old, doesn't it? What can a society do to make sure power is distributed more fairly without, causing total instability?
That is the fundamental question. All this history forces us to ask how we can make sure that concentrated power, whether it's political or financial or technological, how we can make it transparent, how we can make it accountable to the rest of society.
That really is the challenge of our time. So next time you see that word oligarch in a headline, remember its journey. It's not just about one powerful person. It's about a very old, very persistent system of concentrated wealth shaping our world. Thanks for diving deep with us.